Jets are headed down to Tampa this weekend, facing the 2-0 Buccaneers. Tampa off to an impressive start there, and the only team in the NFC who's made the postseason each of the past 5 years. The Jets are looking for their first victory of the season. They want to spoil the Buccaneers home opener. We're going to break it all down coming up with Bart Scott, Brian Baldinger, and Susanna Weir.
We beat anybody in the world, and I think we're going to win next Sunday.
It's picked off. Aaron Glenn. Jumbled and caught. Jumbo Elliott. One-handed catch. Chris Bart gets running loose. Revis can't wait.
Put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride.
The official Jets podcast is presented by Kendra Scott, the jewelry company that's shining bright and doing good. Personalize your game day look by shopping spirited styles and so much more at your local Kendra Scott store or kendrascott.com, where team spirit meets personal style. All right, where I wanted to start this morning, though, was did you guys play Legos as a kid?
I never completed.
I didn't have any toys, EA, when I was young.
Ah.
I had a football and a baseball bat. I didn't know anything about Legos.
Yeah, I had a pogo stick and some rollerblades.
I want video of that, Bart. I want video of you on a pogo stick.
Okay, I'm going somewhere with this. What about
Okay.
instant coffee? Anybody like coffee?
My mother still drinks instant coffee. It's not my thing, but my mother still drinks instant coffee.
My grandma used to wake me up. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
There you go. There you go. Aaron Glenn this week talked about Legos and stacking day by day and having alignment. And everybody also in the world of the National Football League and society in general wants everything right now. And he talked about instant coffee. And that's just not the way the league works. So from a Jets global landscape, they did a lot of good things in week one, whereas week two, it seemed like it was Murphy's Law, right? Everything went wrong. And to Bart's point, do you just bury the football and move on? Because there's 17 games in a season, and this is the onset of a new regime.
Well, I'll take it here, EA. I mean, look, everybody that's a Jet fan, everybody in the building there, you'd love to build on week one against the Steelers. And it didn't happen. And so, but what it says is there's no really such thing as momentum. What it is there's 17 individual weeks. You talk about instant coffee, you can change in an instant anything. Any behavior can change in an instant.
What do you make of the matchup this week, Baldy, when you look at the Buccaneers? I told Bart this earlier this week that I think Tampa's start to the season is as impressive as anyone's because they had two road games against two teams that potentially could finish over 500 and or in the playoffs in Atlanta and Houston. And they showed a lot of mettle and moxie in those games. Baker Mayfield throwing game-winning scores against Atlanta to Bucca, the rookie, and then he comes back the next week and he leads them down the field against the Texans, and they score very late.
Well, he's thrown 5 touchdown passes, no interceptions, and he's had 2 final 2-minute drives to win games. And the thing that's impressive, though, honestly, is their best football player outside of Baker is Tristan Wirfs, and he's not on the field. So they've taken their starting center and playing him at left tackle. They're taking their starting left guard, playing him at center, Ben Bredeson. They got a backup left guard in there, and then they lose their starting right tackle during the game, and they got a backup in Charlie Heck playing right tackle. But you would never know it. You know, that's where that organization is at right now. They lose Kalijah Kancey. He's a first-round pick. He's done for the year, but you wouldn't know it. They've got 2 rookies playing in the secondary in Parrish and Benjamin, but you wouldn't know it. Like that's a different standard. They've won the division 4 years in a row. I mean, Todd Bowles has this thing on track. And so when a guy goes down, everybody will say next man up. But it truly is the next man up. But it does help if you get great quarterback play. And Baker is playing at a very high level.
And Baker's been playing at a high level for the last couple of years. You have to tip his cap. You know, he's a guy, a Tiger that's changing stripes. It's a lot that Justin Fields can learn from the mental toughness and fortitude that Baker Mayfield showed. That's who a lot of guys whose career doesn't start off, whether it's Mac Jones, we saw last week, whether it's Sam Darnold, aspire to be a guy that the team says, you know what, this is our franchise quarterback going forward. And with that being said, you know, he's the head of the snake, right? He's the guy that makes everything go. He's their emotional and vocal leader all at the same time. He inspires them with some of his runs, with the way he plays, the recklessness in which he's willing to put his body out there. And I'm telling myself as a defender, if he's willing to put his body out there and he's willing to take that risk, I'm going to show him that, you might get away with it from everybody else, but it ain't going to work with me. You might find yourself on the injured reserve list because if I get a chance, you think you're going to look me up. And, the crazy thing early on in this season, you have all these quarterbacks that's tough Tonys because they know they had these protections. You got Patrick Mahomes running guys over. I forgot who that was in the it was Jordan Love, looking guys up. If I'm a defender now, I'm saying, okay, these quarterbacks think they tough. Let me hit them like a real football player, not like a quarterback, and I let the cards fall where they may because they're getting a bit reckless with how tough they think they are.
I agree. I see the same thing you're saying.
Old school mentality coming from both of you guys. No surprise there. Okay. At the quarterback position for the Jets, unfortunately, Justin Fields is in concussion protocol. We'll have to see what happens later in the week. Aaron Glenn told reporters that bottom line is he'd have to practice by Friday for him to be comfortable him starting against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, Baldy, this is a tough break for Fields early in the season because he wants to be out there with his teammates, and if he's not able to go against Tampa, it's just a missed opportunity. And hopefully he's back out there on the field soon because the Jets want to see where he's at as far as this system is concerned.
Well, I mean, there's a concussion protocol for a reason. We have to take these kind of injuries serious, and so the Jets will do that because it's actually out of their control. It's all done independently. But look, if Justin can't go, he still has to take this as a learning moment. And Tyrod came in and played pretty good, and he's got a lot of experience. He's seen a lot of football. He started with Bart, down there in Baltimore with the Ravens, and he's had a good career as a backup. And they're probably pretty lucky that they have him because he's a guy that can win you games and can hold down the fort while, if Justin misses this week, I hope everything clears up. But if he doesn't, I feel like the team has confidence in Tyrod. He can do a lot of the same things that Justin does, as far as extending plays and running his mobile, and so it's really, that's where they're at right now. I mean, they got him there for a reason. When Justin got hurt, early in practice, in preseason, in training camp, Tyrod came in, stepped in, and ran the operation. So in practice, and that's what he's expected to do now.
It's a luxury to have Tyrod Taylor. As you see, the story of the early football season is backup quarterbacks, and the Jets just so happen to make sure that they've secured and locked down a veteran quarterback, a guy who has tremendous experience playing, a guy that has had tremendous experience being a backup, so he knows how to come off the bench cold. But also, when you talk about what they're facing today, I would say that Tyrod is probably better suited because, Ty Bowles going to start blitzing coming off the bench, coming off the bus. So the fact that Tyrod knows where to go, I thought Tanner did a good job in certain instances in drawing up plays. And, unfortunately, Justin just couldn't make the accurate throws, which is some of the things that we concern ourselves with his mechanics at times, being able to make sure that he's fundamentally sound when he delivers the ball so it's an accurate ball. Isaiah Davis still may be running. That maybe changes the complexion of the game. So Tyrod is a guy that is going to use his legs, but he's going to use his legs to pass and always keep his eyes downfield. He's an accurate quarterback. He's a guy that, comes from the Baltimore system. So he's experienced with being around organized chaos and having guys blitzing from every single way, dealing with the Wink Martindale and all those type of defenses that he was with, to learn how to operate in that type of chaos.
It's interesting. Buffalo blitzed their corners from the very first play of the game. Yeah. And the Jets really didn't have a great answer. I'm sure Todd Bowles, he's got his own pressure packages. That's who they are. So, but I'm sure he's looking at the success that Buffalo had and how they came off the edge.
All right. Save that. Let's take a break, and then we're going to really dive into this matchup. Jets offense versus Bucs defense in Week 3. Jets football is back at MetLife Stadium for Week 5 as the Jets face off against the Cowboys on October 5th at 1 p.m., presented by Atlantic Health System. Get your seats now at nyjets.com/tickets. All right, Baldy. Jets offense going against the Buccaneers defense in week 3. When you look at the Bucs, as Bart has been saying all week, you know what Todd Bowles is known for? He's going to be blitzing when the Jets get off the bus. So what's the counter there for this offense that looked really good in week 1, struggled in week 2?
Well, look, I always think when teams blitz you, it's an opportunity. All right? It's an opportunity to make plays and big plays. I mean, if you watched the Chargers against the Raiders the other night, Justin Herbert, every time they came after him, he had an answer for it. I watched the Eagles last week against Kansas City, and Max blitzed Jalen Hurts 4 times. And the biggest play of the game, they caught him. 1-on-1, they threw the jump ball. Devontae Smith caught it. Like, it's an opportunity. If you're really sharp with your packages and how to sight adjust, where's the hot read, where's it coming from, you're going to replace that guy with your receiver with who's coming. And they didn't do that last week against Buffalo's corner blitzes. And I just think you got to really lock in. You got to get a pre-snap read and where they might be coming from. Todd's not going to show it, but they're going to come after him. And it could be the free safety. I mean, it could be their linebackers. I mean, it's going to be some combination. And so it's just opportunities, I think, to really hit them and make them pay for that sometimes. Because they don't have – look, Hassan Reddick is out there. Jets know him well. Unfortunately, things didn't work out for him. But, you know, he's the one guy off the edge that they'd rather have that's pretty good. Yaya Diaby is pretty good. They got okay guys, but they want to get there in a hurry. That's why Todd blitzes. He wants speed to the quarterback. He wants to heat him up, you know, and so make him get rid of the ball quickly. But if you're sharp, like, you can make them pay.
It's always a liar on the field, right? It's always somebody that's going to give it up. It's always somebody that's going to beat a tail. You find that guy. And the problem was, you know, the Jets didn't realize last week Buffalo didn't blitz to stop the pass. They blitzed to stop the run. So that's what you're talking about. You're talking about bringing in there. But, you know, I thought Justin Fields struggled in the nuance of the game. And the nuance is how you have your cadence, right? I think he got into this too big of a rhythm where it was just simply go up to the line of scrimmage, not a lot of time on the clock, and call the play. You know, you smoke all this stuff out with shifts and motions and being able to send guys in motion, go up there with dummy counts, and then figure it out that way, right? So I think you have to get to the line of scrimmage early so that when you have a guy like Todd Bowles, you can play the game with him. And this is the thing. You live by the blitz, you also die by the blitz. If you can recognize that it's cover 0, right, what happens is all you do is you put guys in condensed formations, and then you pick each other because it becomes a one-on-one matchup because it's so much space once the linebackers blitz. It's so much space underneath, so you can get somebody in a pick route, and they're stuck in a foot race across the field with no help, no leverage, anything. So they can have leverage on the backside, but what happens is you run away from leverage, and it just becomes a foot race. And then if you're able to buy time by retreating, if you're a guy like Tyrod, you take those real deep drops, maybe a 12-step drop, and you just heaving it up there and throwing a jump ball. The cornerbacks almost never, because they can't risk going for the interception because there's nobody there. There's no safety. So they're just going to try and make the tackle. So that play is rarely ever blitzed. I mean, against Tebow once upon a time, he circled our defense on that because he saw that the outside defender was coming. He acted like he didn't see him, and he ducked him, and he missed it. And then that happens. That's a whole nother way. But I don't suggest that way. You know, that was just Tebow being a superior athlete is super strong. I say run pick routes or, you know, crossing routes and rub guys off.
How beneficial is it, Baldy, for the Jets to have Tyrod Taylor as a backup quarterback? Here's a guy who's played 15 years in the league, completed more than 61% of his passes. You look at his touchdown to interception ratio, it's always been quite strong. He protects the football. And for my money, you guys have watched him for a long time now. I had the benefit of watching him the last couple summers. He still throws one of the best vertical balls in the league, bar none.
No, it was a good signing. It's a really good signing. And, you know, there's a lot of teams out there scrambling right now to get their backup quarterback situation straightened out. In a lot of these places around the league right now, if they lose their starter, you know, Cincinnati feels pretty fortunate that they got a capable backup, you know, that helped them win the game the other day. Tyrod Taylor could do the same thing. And so, you know, in some ways they might, look, Justin Fields is the starter. I'm not saying anything, but, you know, against the Todd Bowles team, it might be helpful to have a guy that has seen the package and the pressure combinations that Todd comes after you with, and the experience of going up against Todd's defenses over the years. And so in game planning for it and all those kind of things. I think that if things don't go well for Justin this week and he's got to lay low for a week, like I think they're fortunate against a team that's identity is built around pressure packages and what they do. Todd Bowles is reading quarterbacks' eyes. He's reading what they do in the pocket. Like he's building these pressure packages based on, does the quarterback keep his eyes down the field? Does he drop the eyes and read the rush? Like all these things factor in to what they do. And so honestly, they'll have two different pressure packages, one for Justin Fields and one for Tyrod Taylor. I don't think there's any question about that, depending on who's going to go this week. So it could be something totally different.
Yeah, and then
go ahead.
You talk about the fact that, Tanner can also, have a more diverse passing attack with these picks, motions, and formations and all that stuff because, Tyrod can handle that, right? He's a guy that can get the pre-snap and post-snap reads. He can also a guy who's accustomed to turning his back to the defense, snapping his head around, finding the safety and understanding where to go with the football because he is an experienced passer, right? He understands the hot routes. And, if it's going to be Tyrod, I think the package has to be totally different as well because they have, similar traits. But, I would say that Justin Fields is a better runner of the football at this stage in his career, more physical guy, faster, right? And you talk about Tyrod as a more sophisticated passer. So you have to, I would see the passing game being able to open up the run game because that's something that you definitely have to establish and get to respect Vita Vea in that front seven.
Oh, okay, so before we flip it to the other side of the ball, final point here. Bart, how are the Jets get the run game going? And is it tied to the success they're going to have in the passing game against the Buccaneers? Because one of the guys I'm sure who you've always circled throughout your years of analysis is that big guy in the middle. Like Baldy's talking about Clancy being out. They still have Vita Vea.
Yeah, I mean, it's about getting that respect, but it's about the commitment to the run as well, right? You're going to have some negative runs because they do have, fast flowing. They have, I think, a borderline Hall of Famer in David, what I mean, linebacker, who's kind of like that Ray Lewis, John Beasley type of calming presence, but still playing at a high level. I don't know. We got to test him for the Benjamin Button juice or something. I don't know what's going on with that. But you talk about, just you have to be able to figure out, okay, against this team, what type of runs are effective, right? And I think if you look at some of what Nick Chubb was able to do, it was moments in that game where they were able to gouge these guys. And when you have a team that's blitzing, it's opportunities that if you run opposite the blitz, that they basically take a man from the second level out of the play. And you have to understand, do we let this guy go and climb up? So you have to be, understand, most tendencies and most teams have certain type of fronts that they like to blitz out of. And you have to be on point to understand, okay, they really run blitzes out of this front, right? So when you get that front, your alerts have to be up. That's why the details and being a professional really comes into play when understanding, it's a bare front. Maybe they might not show the bare front. Maybe they might motion to it and move to it. Linemen got to be able to adjust to, okay, how are we going to scoop up to the second level based on this front that we got? Now, we didn't have time to communicate it, but we all saw it. And we all got to be on one accord and know, okay, this is how we're going to attack this particular front. Whether it's reduce, under, bear, you got to each run is blocked totally different based on the front.
Let's take a break. We're going to flip it to the other side of the ball. The Jets defense going against Baker Mayfield and that Tampa offense. The official Jets podcast is presented by Kendra Scott, the jewelry company that's shining bright and doing good. Personalize your game day look by shopping spirited styles and so much more at your local Kendra Scott store or kendrascott.com, where team spirit meets personal style. All right, Baldy, let's get out of the gate here when we talk about this matchup with the Jets defense this week. The Bucs tackles, they've been banged up. You mentioned Wirfs at the onset here. We'll have to see if he makes his regular season debut.
Well, they have juggled the whole offensive line. They didn't show any of that in preseason. They juggled the whole offensive line to handle the loss of Tristan Wirfs. And Graham Barton was a left tackle at Duke before he was drafted. He moved from starting center. He's a very good center. He's very athletic. But, Charlie Heck playing right tackle, he's going to be out there. And, that's, to me, you got to, you got to identify the weaknesses in your protection. And one of them is Charlie Heck is not as good as, Gadecki, who just got a new contract. So I think that you got to put your best pass rusher against him and see if you can win those matchups. Maybe Will McDonald goes to that side. He can play both sides. I mean, I put my best pass rusher there. And the other thing is, what was disappointing last week was just the penalties on third down. They gave the Bills first downs. 3rd and 19, okay, the late hit by Clemens and, the hold by Tony Adams on 3rd and 7. When you're getting off the field, like that's the money down. You got to get off the field. And so you could give up yards and you can give up plays. Those things are going to happen. They've got, we got a Hall of Fame wide receiver, Mike Evans. They've got a great young player in Ibuka. Those guys are going to make plays. They've already proven that they're going to make plays. You've got to be able to get off the field on third down in this business. That's the money down. That's when everything has to click. Tackling, Sauce can't grab a jersey, Tony Adams can't hold. Like those things, that's what I want to see this week. The improvement on third down.
Now Baker gets a ton of headlines, and rightfully so, because the dude is a gamer. He's tough as hell. And he's really turned into a great quarterback. 4,500 yards last year. He did have 16 interceptions, I will say that. But, Bart, I don't think this team gets enough credit when you're talking about Tampa as far as what they're doing running the football. What do the Jets have to do this week to be more on point? Because every team has a different style. You guys know this better than anybody. So, Cook, we saw a lot of cutbacks. That feels like Tampa is coming right at you. I mean, they're running pretty vertical with Irvin and Rashad White. I mean, Bucky Irvin is running hard right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's like a little mini Pacheco, right? But he's really a lot smaller, but he runs with that same mentality. He's an all-effort type of guy. You saw White with the game-winning score. You have to understand that you have to set your edges, right? You have to set your edges. You want to funnel them all to those linebackers. Make sure that you're good on not letting them circle the defense. But understand that you're going to get a lot of these zone type of principal runs where they're trying to get that, stretch type of run, or we call it boss outside zone, where it gives him opportunity to stick that foot into the ground by the time you get to the numbers, and he's getting vertical. And it's no nonsense. There's no messing around. Both of these guys are nonsense type of guys. They're not going to try and Le'Veon Bell you to death and slow down and read the runs. They're hitting it and they're committing to it. You got to make sure that you bring your feet. You got to bring your ass too. You know what I mean? Because they'll embarrass you if you don't come downhill and have your shoulders square. You have to be in unison as far as a linebacker unit. Everybody doing their role, understanding their part, right? It may be your time to make sure that you jump on that grenade. And sometimes it's mine, but you have to willingly do it. I need you to see it. It can't be any hesitation in the run game. When you're a linebacker, you play downhill, and you let everybody else figure it out behind you.
Baldy, simply, why have the Bucs been able to overcome those offensive line injuries in terms of the run game?
Well, this they hired this Kevin Carberry to be the offensive line coach. He was the offensive line coach for the Rams when they won a Super Bowl. He's got these kids believing that they can do it, and then they play very well together. That's the key. It's individuals. Tristan Wirfs is a great individual talent, but their strength is how they play together, including the two tight ends. They're very in and even last week, blitz pickup by either Bucky Irving or Rashad White. Like how they scan and where the free guy is coming from, because Houston, they can blitz as well as anybody, but their blitz pickup was really good. They're in the room together, EA, and they're seeing it as one. That's the key, is they're all seeing the same thing. Now, does Charlie Heck have the same talent that Gadecki have, or does Graham Bart have the same talent as Wirfs? No, but they're in position. They're in position. They didn't commit penalties on last week against, Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter. Like they stayed in front of their guys. And so I think they've been well coached, and they must spend a lot of team time in the room together to see everything as one. And I think that's a real tribute, to the coaching staff and what they're doing right now.
Bart, what do you want to see from the secondary this week? And obviously a lot of people are going to be focused on the potential matchup between Sauce Gardner and the future Hall of Famer and Mike Evans. But, Godwin unlikely to play again, you would figure. I mean, again, we're taping this Wednesday, so don't come at me if he plays next week and fans, because we're taping
You're
this
okay,
Wednesday morning. I mean, you got Shepard there, who's been filling in, and then obviously Ibuka's been a revelation. We talked about him, and you were looking at him on film. Jets Game Day, you can watch that locally, New York, Sunday, 7:30, CBS or YouTube. Just giving a shameless plug there. But what are you seeing from them in the passing game?
I mean, they're attacking vertically, right? And you look at Ibuka, he gets on the field, and him and Mike Evans on the same side. Look out. You better have a plan. You got to take that backside safety. You got to lock the backside corner. You got to push that backside safety over to the front side with those trips to the field, because they're going to try and buy your attention with Mike Evans. They're going to try and isolate this kid on like some type of skinny post or some type of bang 8, and you better be in there, because if that safety comes short, respecting Mike Evans in an intermediate route, they're going to hit you deep, and that corner's going to be on that back, and it becomes a foot race. And this kid early in the season, 3 touchdown passes, 2 of them were long bombs. Mm-hmm. And so you talk about explosiveness. You don't want to die fast that way. You want to make them earn it and matriculate the ball down the field where you have more opportunities to get them behind the sticks. You're going to have to be great in your communication and your pre-snap recognition. And so I want to see these guys step up, because they're going to be tested, this way.
Got to get some takeaways too, Baldy. Through 2 games, the Jets have yet to get a takeaway.
7 teams right now, 7 teams in this league, haven't taken the ball away. The Jets are one of them. But, here's an interesting stat. After only 2 weeks, there's 7 teams in this league that have not turned the ball over yet, okay? 7 teams. The combined record of those 7 teams is 13-1. You win the turnover margin in this business, you win games. The Eagles, the Jets win Pittsburgh if they don't fumble that kickoff. Like, it's just, it literally, because the possessions are so valuable right now. Some games you're getting 8 or 9 possessions. If you turn it over, that's a possession where you can't score. Maybe you give the opportunity. And so it is key. If you get the ball out, get the ball. And so we said it last week. The key to beating Buffalo is, to be able to take the ball away. And when they have beaten them, they've won that turnover battle. And so I'm sure it's being preached. I'm sure it's being worked on, whether it's a peanut punch or tip drills or whatever. They get the hands on the ball, they got to take it away. And so,
all right, final point here. Baldy resides down there in South Florida a lot of the year. And Bart, you spent a lot of time down there as well. It's going to be 90 degrees about kickoff.
Hey, hydrate. It starts on Wednesday. It starts today.
Your depth's going to be Sunday. Your depth's going to be tested as well, won't it, Bart? Because these big guys, they're not going to be able to play the same play count as they would on a fall day up here.
You better get that pickle juice. You better start eating them pickles and drinking that pickle juice early. Get that sodium, that vinegar into your system. Yeah, hope you can start retaining water. Listen, whenever I played down in Miami or Tampa early in the season, it was no nonsense. It was no, listen, you might come to the sideline and get punched in the face if you jump off sides on 3rd and 4. Those are fighting words. So listen, we got 1 or 2 conversations. Either we gonna fight them or we gonna fight each other. But I tell you what, you make me sit out there and I'm sitting up there cramping up, got to get IV. We gonna have some issues. We gonna have some conversations on that sideline. We getting off the field.
Denver fighting words. Good job, boys.
Thanks, EA.
The NFL Fan of the Year contest presented by Captain Morgan is back, and the Jets are looking to celebrate extraordinary fans who will represent the team at Super Bowl 60 in San Francisco. Visit nyjets.com/fan of the year to submit your nomination now. All right, let's do our extra point with Susanna Weir right now. There's parallels between the Jets in 2025 and the Broncos in 2024. Tell me.
Yeah, so the Broncos started 0-2 last year, much like this team right now, and then they went on the road to Tampa in Week 3 to face a 2-0 Buccaneers team and got their first win of the season. So shaping up
So this thing can turn around.
I think so. I saw it happen last year, so there's no reason to believe it can't be replicated.
All right, we're going to talk mostly about the Jets, but what was the feeling there in Denver covering that team after a couple of weeks? You had a rookie quarterback, a different situation, but again, you're trying to build something.
Yeah, I mean, there was still a lot to figure out. I think offensively they had yet to click, but there was still the building blocks were in place. That was kind of like the feeling there. And it was like they just needed something to go their way. And I think a huge thing, and something that we've already seen with the Jets as well, was they weren't winning the turnover battle in the first 2 weeks. You had a rookie quarterback, he was turning over the ball, and the defense was still getting a few takeaways, but they were not winning that battle. And we've seen that with the Jets as well. And so game 3, they win the turnover battle, they win the game. So I definitely think it's an important piece of the puzzle and something that the Jets will certainly be looking for moving forward.
Wouldn't that be something if the Jets repeat history here, go down to Tampa and beat them in their home opener?
It would be. It would be.
So what do you make of the squad after 2 weeks? You had the Pittsburgh game, one that probably got away from the green and white because they dominated on the statistics side of things. But again, a couple things you mentioned, turnovers, a couple untimely penalties, and it goes the other direction. Chris Boswell nails a 60-yarder, and then the game got away from the Jets early last week against the Bills.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the game's 2 completely different scenarios. You felt like you were in the game and kind of controlling the game the entire time in week 1, and then week 2, it slipped away rather quickly. And I think, much like Aaron Glenn has been talking about, there's a lot of maybe overreactions when you have dramatic scenarios like that. I think week 1, there was a lot of hope. There was a lot of we're headed in the right direction. And then you come back from week 2 with kind of a disappointing performance. And now, it feels like, oh, the sky's falling and things are headed the wrong direction. I liked what he said about kind of just having patience and realizing like this is the up and down of the league. It's a week to week league. And so, we can't overreact from week 1, but we also can't overreact from week 2. And week 3 can be a completely different scenario. So
a lot of people are going to lose to the Bills this year. That's the bottom line. I think the Jets and their fan base were most upset about the brand of football they put on the field. So for them right now is that they want to get back to everything that Aaron has been talking about since he walked in the doors since January.
Yeah, and I think, you've heard that from a lot of the players. And Quincy the other day was saying somebody asked him, does this feel like the same thing over again? And he was like, no, the feeling here is different. The vibe in the building is different. Everything that we've been talking about in meetings, out on the practice field, it feels different. So I think that's important as well, is it does take time for that to translate on the field. But the fact that the foundational pieces they feel like are there and they're talking about the right things and building the right things, I think it's only a matter of time before you see that translate on the field. But it takes time. And so that's why having patience
We're in New
at
York.
this point,
You're from New York. We don't accept
time.
that. No, but early on under Peyton, Vance Joseph, defensive coordinator, well respected, there were moments there it wasn't pretty. You go back to that Miami game early the previous season when they put 70 on the board. The reason why I'm bringing that up is that right now the Jets defense, I think a lot of people thought they're going to be able to depend on them while the offense comes along. What do you make of where the defense is at? And takeaways aside, what do they have to do better starting this week against Tampa?
Yeah, well, I think what you've heard from a lot of guys is the discipline comes first. And whether that's the penalties or it's just staying where you're supposed to be, I think that's been something that they've all talked about and I liked that Aaron Glenn said, listen, we recognize that. And that's something that can be fixed quickly because it's a matter of just watching where we were that was incorrect and then saying, all right, no, here's where we need to be. And I think it comes down to the discipline piece of just, he said they were over pursuing in defending the run. And that's something that he feels like can be fixed rather quickly. And so that's encouraging to hear as well, is that it's not like, the defense is completely in shambles and it's not anything that we thought it was going to be. I think there's just a few things that need to be slightly adjusted and it can get back to looking like what they thought it was going to look like.
There's a lot of pieces here. And Steve Wilkes and Aaron Glenn have coached a lot of successful defenses over time. I anticipate we're going to see a bunch of fixes as we go on. You've been here every day. Let's go back to training camp. If Tyrod Taylor is indeed the starter, what will it look like? And also, what's the feel in the room as far as what Tyrod brings to the table?
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at Tyrod, this is a guy that's been around the league for forever, it feels like. And so I think just
36 years old.
And yeah, and so listening to a lot of guys talk about it when they've been asked, what would that mean? It's like, I think they take a lot of comfort in the fact that he's seen a lot of football and he's been in a lot of games. And that brings, that's a comforting presence to have when you have a guy who has experience not only several years in the league, but with several teams. So he's seen a lot of different things. He's been in a lot of different places. And I think when you have somebody stepping in like that, he's also had a lot of experience as a backup coming in, maybe not starting the season, starting games, being able to just like step in pretty seamlessly. And they've talked about, from the moment that Justin Fields got here, that they felt very confident having Tyrod back there, not only as a veteran presence, but just because there's so much that he brings to the table. And so, I think they also feel like he fits what they're doing here very well. And so Aaron Glenn said from the beginning, there's no drop off in terms of talent, in terms of, his presence. And so I feel like they feel pretty confident having him in there.
Yeah, Baldy said it before, and I thought that was quite accurate because we tape on Wednesdays, was that he's in concussion protocol, Justin Fields. So it's out of the Jets' hands. Whenever he passes concussion protocol, he'll be back in the lineup. But with that being said, we got an understanding of where Aaron Glenn is at in terms of when he has to name his starter by, right? Because they're preparing early in the week to have plans for both guys. But once we get to Friday, we should have a good idea who's going to be starting.
Yeah, and then I think, I'm sure that they're considering both scenarios. They're going to be prepared for whoever's out there. But I think that's why it's important that Aaron Glenn said there's not a whole lot of drop-off or things that we need to do differently necessarily with those two quarterbacks. I think that's huge, especially in a week where you're kind of facing that uncertainty. You're not totally sure when Justin is going to be back. And so, and you might not have that answer until late in the week. But I think that gets back to Aaron Glenn emphasizing play style over personnel.
There you go.
Yeah.
Play style over playbook. But yeah, so if you're watching this on Friday or even Saturday or listening to it, you probably know who the starting quarterback is. But the Jets did start the week with some uncertainty there, with knowing that Fields is in concussion protocol, but also preparing for Tyrod. And also, in about an hour, we're going to go downstairs and listen to Aaron Glenn address the media, so maybe we'll get a little bit more light on the situation as well. But what is clear is if Fields doesn't practice throughout the week, by Friday, it's going to be Tyrod's ball. Yeah. Young players, let's get out of here on this. I just wanted to ask you about some young guys. You talked to Aaron Smith. First NFL reception. Fans are really interested in his development. Where do you think he's at?
Yeah, I think, I talked to him after the game, and the first thing that he said was, it was great to get the catch, but I wish I could have gotten more to help this team. And so, that's the right mindset, kind of thinking about it bigger picture. We didn't get the job done as a team. But I think the biggest thing for him is that explosive play ability that he has. And I want to see that utilized more, moving forward in the season. We've got to use his speed. I think that's like the number one thing that everybody coming in was blown away by. This guy's fast. And so I'd like to see that utilized a little bit more, but I definitely think he's coming along the right way.
Well, a tough break for him because they also went to him after a Garrett Wilson connection from Fields on an end around, and the Bills really snuffed that out. They were all over that. But you're starting to see him get involved a little bit more. Also, number of injuries in the secondary that we're going to continue to monitor throughout the week. But Malachi Moore, your thoughts early on, because he's been a core special teamer early, but he was forced in the lineup when Tony Adams went out last week.
Yeah, I think they were impressed with him just kind of seamlessly stepping in there and taking on a much larger role than he previously had. I'm curious to hear his take on his, performance there, but I think they're pretty encouraged by what they saw.
AG was talking about the importance of communication, and just he's going to benefit from the experience just being out there with the ones for the first time in regular season play. There's no doubt about that. A lot of changes on special teams. We saw a couple returners back there after the Jets moved on from Xavier Gibson, Isaiah Davis getting some run, and Isaiah Williams as well.
Yeah, and I think we're going to kind of I think we're going to see that situation continue to evolve, and I think they've spoken about that. It's like constant evaluation, who's going to give us the best opportunities there. So, but I feel like what they saw from the two of those guys was encouraging for, the limited sample size.
Yeah, it was a small sample size. Okay, give me a matchup advantage that the Jets have to really get after this week against the Buccaneers in order to spring an upset.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll take it back to what I saw last year. I think Pat Surtain covered Mike Evans for most of the day last year and really limited him, and that was huge. The Bucs really didn't get much going offensively. I think they scored one touchdown in that game
So
last year.
you're putting this on Sauce. You got
So
Sauce
I'm
on Mike
putting
Evans.
it on Sauce, yeah. I'd like to see a strong performance out of him. I think, I've spoken about it before, but when you can kind of lock down one of the top playmakers like that, I think it's huge.
Okay, so bottom line, Susanna says, we've seen turnaround start in Tampa before. Let's see if it happens again Sunday. Thanks.